Alright, so let's continue to talk about the hypodermis. So it turns out that some of the uh, things in your dermis are also going to be present in your hypodermis. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Pacinian corpuscle. So the Pacinian corpuscle is present in your dermis, but it is also present in your hypodermis. So the location where the Pacinian corpuscle terminates varies between the dermis and the hypodermis. So the Pacinian corpuscles can also terminate in your hypodermis. So I'll just draw that to represent a Pacinian corpuscle. Hair is in the hypodermis. So hairs can be in the dermis and also the hypodermis. And if you remember from last video, or the dermis videos, I said that the junction between the dermis and epidermis comes down whenever there's a hair. So I'll draw it over here. If this is your junction between the epidermis and dermis, so epidermis, dermis, then this sort of junction would come down whenever there was a hair. And it would sort of encoat that hair. And then it would come back up, continue on. And the hair would sort of sit in this thing that came down. And we talked about that in past videos. So I won't go too in depth into the diagram and everything. I just want to say how this relates to hairs if they terminate in the hypodermis. So the same thing will happen, except this when this junction sort of comes down, it will just continue on into the hypodermis. So it will sort of just come into the hypodermis. So if I draw it like this, if this is the dermis, I'll just say it's like this area. Then this is the hypodermis. Okay, it would come down, and then it would come down into the hypodermis. And then this hair follicle would just sit there. Okay. So those are hair follicles. So I'll draw a hair follicle coming in from the dermis. I'm not going to label it because I already talked about hair follicles in the dermis video. But just know that there is a hair follicle there. This right here is a hair. So, okay. All right. Now, the last thing I want to talk about are eccrine sweat glands and apocrine sweat glands. So you might have guessed from the hair here that apocrine sweat glands can also be present in the hypodermis, because apocrine sweat glands often or can come with hair. Yeah. So they sort of lead off into the hair. So apocrine sweat glands can also be present in this hypodermis. So I'll just say apocrine sweat glands. Yeah. And the secretory part of the eccrine sweat glands, let's draw it like this, can also be in the hypodermis. So this is an eccrine sweat gland, and it terminates in the hypodermis, or the secretory part is in the hypodermis. I won't talk about either of these sweat glands because I talked about them in the dermis videos. So that pretty much concludes this video. Thank you.